September 2019, African Union launched the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which hopefully is going to be the world's largest free trade area by the number of countries we have in Africa. After years of talks and negotiation, the goal basically is to have a single market for goods and services within the 54 countries in Africa. In a discussion with Africa's Ralia Odinga, he stated reasons why majority of African countries have responded well to the pandemic and how we hope to revive our trade relationships after the coronavirus. We do hope and believe after the coronavirus, it will be more actions and less talks for our African leaders. It will be a very huge development for African Union and African countries in general.
That was going to be my question, because last week you wrote a comment when you said this crisis offers an opportunity for Africa. And that's why I asked you, how do we recover and how do we now take this chance as a continent?
We must see that Africa is going to be left on its own. See, Africa has depended so much on the international community. Most of our trade, you could say, is to the external world. Africa's internal trade, as before COVID, was only 15%, meaning that 85% of our trade is with our external world. And most of it is commodities which we're exporting. We're exporting oil, we're exporting minerals to the external world, and in exchange we're bringing in manufactured products, textiles, foodstuffs, electronic goods, things like tractors, automobiles, and so on. Now, that kind of opportunity is now not going to exist, because most of those economies are also affected. So we need to now look internally intra-African trade. And that actually was signed. The Continental Free Trade Agreement came into effect last year. So the COVID pandemic gives us opportunity to realize the African Free Trade Area Agreement, that we need to now open up the continent. So the opportunity now exists to do connectivity in terms of infrastructure development. We need to think of how we can connect so that goods can flow freely from one African country to the other, okay? And then we need to promote now the trade, import and exports. But more importantly, we need to now do value addition. Whereas in the past we were exporting raw materials, we now need to make manufactured products. So instead of us exporting, for example, iron ore, we should be now manufacturing steel and steel products. Instead of exporting copper ore, we will be able to now export copper cables, copper products. Instead of exporting bauxite, we'll be exporting aluminium finished products and so on. Even gold, we should be processing gold, not raw gold or as ore. For example, even diamonds, we should be having diamond cutting facilities on the continent so that we export diamond products, not just raw diamonds.
And indeed we've seen
oil. An opportunity for petrochemical industries to come up on the continent so that we now manufacture finished products in this continent. And this is a challenge that Africa needs to take. And I'm sure that African countries will wake up to this reality, that nobody is going to help them, because everybody has been affected. And you cannot expect help from Europe when Europe itself is on its knees. The United States is crying, even China is crying. So Africa must just rise up and become Africa and I know that it is possible.
It's interesting you say that, because we've seen Senegal producing a $1 test kit. We have seen countries like Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia saying we're now going to make our own ventilators. What does this disease offer in terms of our health systems? First, have we been exposed? Have our health systems been exposed this far? And what opportunities now lie for the health systems?
You see, our health system has been now exposed, and it has been found to be wanting, that it is not ready to respond to the challenges. But because of this, we are now beginning to think out of the box. What do we do? Cannot be able to get ventilators from Europe, the United States, or China. They themselves also need those. They don't have enough for themselves. So we must do it for ourselves. And you can see now the African brain mind is beginning to work. The students at the Jomo Kenyatta University have come up with a ventilator, which can now be produced commercially. See, they say that necessity is the mother of inventions. So the Africans are now becoming inventors rather than copiers of other people's technologies. This now gives us time to think out of the box. And you see, what happened when Hitler was challenged seriously during the Second World War? He set up a research institution that was called Panemunde. It was led by none other than Werner von Braun, the guy who started NASA. And that's where they started the idea of manufacturing the nuclear weapons. So, because Germany was challenged, Africa is now challenged. In my view, this is the time to realize Kwame Nkrumah's call for the continent, that Africa must unite. We have no other one, nothing to lose but our chains. So Nkrumah called for it many years ago. He was like a dreamer. But now it's been proven to be right, that Africa will only develop as a unit, even if it's united. And we need to go and look at the regional blocks, strengthen these regional blocks, and come up with a real unit at the continental level, where we can have ministers in Africa in charge of health, in charge of agriculture, of food production, because that's another challenge here, in charge of infrastructure, in charge of trade, in charge of ICT, and so on and so forth. So that decisions are not just made in Addis Ababa and left there to rot until the following year's summit. That there is a mechanism to do follow-up, so that there's implementation of the good ideas which emerge every year at the AU Heads of State Summit in Addis Ababa, but never see the light of the day.
Indeed, the only thing we have to lose are the chains. However, we are backward with debt, we are backward with all these grants that we have, and now African leaders are also coming together to ask that debts are forgiven, so that they can be able to develop their health systems and that they can be able to respond to the disease. What is your response to this?
Certainly, the challenge is enormous, and the capital requirement is going to be also gigantic to be able to deal with the effects of this onto the economies of Africa. And you cannot actually be expected to be doing this and at the same time repaying this heavy debt which Africa is carrying. This is really the time for the Africa's partners to have a look at the Africa's indebtedness and begin serious discussions. This can be done at multilateral level, but also at a bilateral level. To talk first, look at what is possible in terms of debt write-offs. Secondly, what about rescheduling, debt rescheduling and restructuring? For example, looking at the rate of interest and so on, things like those. This happened in the Second World War. I just think of Europe post-Second World War. The whole of Europe was in rubbles, in shambles, and they had to start reconstruction, and they had to think out the box. That's how the idea of Marshall Plan to reconstruct Europe came up. You see, the United States, fortunately, was not as destroyed. So the United States was able to inject some capital. But then they had the manpower, which is another advantage that they had for reconstruction. But now they looked at what was really needed at that time. And they said, for example, just the reconstruction of their industries, of their infrastructure, of their buildings and so on was necessary. So they put a lot of emphasis on things like masonry, plumbing, carpentry, electrical works and so on and so forth. And they trained people quickly and they started to do the work. I was in Germany. I went to Germany literally 15 years after the reconstruction work had started. And when you went to West Germany and I went to Britain, you'd think that Britain lost the war and Germany won the war because of the amount of work that had gone into the reconstruction of what had been destroyed in the war. So our economies are now limping on their knees. But this now gives us also opportunity to have a rethink and a look at our development paradigm and see if we have not followed a wrong path. Instead of taking 55 years to reach where we are, probably we need a shorter period. Examples abound in the world. I've given you post-World War Europe. Another example you can think of is China, which after the reforms which they started, within a period of 30 years, they have been able to move over nearly 500 million people from poverty to middle income status. This can be done. South Korea did it and moved. And this is just in a short period of time, 1970, when General Park Chung-hee came to power in South Korea. And he came up with a philosophy called the Somuldong philosophy and transformed the Korean society so that when you go to rural Korea, you would wonder when they tell you this is Korea before 1970 and this is Korea after 1970. So this can be done on our continent. And I really want to urge African leaders to look at this as an opportunity, think out of the box, and move on, and move Africa from poverty forever. This, in my view, would be the advice that I want to give to our heads of states.
Guys, if you've watched this video from the beginning till this stage, I am so grateful. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, guys, like and share this video. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.